there is a pay gap, and progressives in my party want to address it with legislation, that is, command and control over employment. What they don't do is explain why there's a pay gap. Their explanations are totally inadequate. The two things you will hear: number one, employers are misogynistic. They dislike women. They'll put them down as much as possible. Well, if that was true, then they wouldn't hire them in the first place. Number two is, well, employers are mean and will push on people who are weak to make their salaries low. Now, that might have some more truth to it, but then the legislation is not very effective, because what about weak men who don't bargain for themselves very well? What about men who don't speak English well, but might be very talented, and their wages are getting submerged too? Your legislation isn't addressing that. Your legislation is addressing it by sex. You like to group by groups in the first place. So let me, Mark Stewart Greenstein, a thoughtful Democrat, give the real reasons behind the pay distinction between women and men. Now, some of these progressives don't like to hear, but listen anyway. It is illuminating. It will help if you want to do any proposed legislation down the road. So the overarching, call it point one: women are different from men. Men are from Venus, women are from Mars. Maybe it's the opposite way, but it is a distinction that's been recognized for generations, and a lot of progressives don't want that. So here's how it manifests itself in the workplace. Number one, we end up with women choosing professions more often that aren't as high paying, okay? It's not an indictment of males or females, but when women put themselves more into caring professions, into jobs where they get satisfaction by listening, feeling, often working with children, they have to be lower paid than being in the sciences, being in hardcore engineering, which has been occupied by men. No wonder the salaries are different. Number two, the commitment of women to their career, not as high. Women have the lovely ability to become moms, and most take that, and with it, take themselves out of the workplace for many years. It does make it hard to command a big salary when, compared to the man, you've been in the workforce for less time. Number three, it's related. It's the employer's expectation of a woman's commitment. And every woman can prove herself differently, but until this happens on a widespread basis, which may be never, recognize that an employer seeing a man who is unlikely to go off to family responsibilities as more promotable, more entrusting for bigger responsibility. That might not be unfair. That might not be. But it's not the misogyny that people allege of employers. Now, the fourth one is maybe the most serious. Women don't have as much bargaining power to move jobs, especially single women. And this is the one area where I might consider legislating, because I do think there's a societal responsibility for us to help raise good kids, and thus help working women make sure they can do it all, or do a lot better. So recognize that the single mom can't get away with 2 months of no paycheck. Whereas the guy, he can say to his employer, he doesn't like me, I'm leaving, I can find another job in a couple months, I can hold out. That's a big disparity that probably keeps women tethered to their jobs even with a low salary. Now, what's the solution? Not government on the first instinct. Make it the last. My solution is to make sure that women have advocates in their social circles, in their employment circles, maybe in law schools where there are legal clinics. A lot of those legal clinics have been used to help destitute people in urban areas. Why not use them to help professional women flourish? and be able to guide the woman who it looks like has been squashed down in salary and armed now with her advocates, walk into that employer's office and say, I've been underpaid by $5 an hour for the last 4 years. I want a raise to the level of everybody else or I'm leaving. Even better, I've been underpaid or I'm leaving, you pig. And let the free market, which is truly the best ally of professional women, let that be her best recourse when an employer doesn't want to buy in. Let public assessment of that employer also help, because people like me want to fight for you, and I'm going to withhold my dollars from an employer that I know is discriminating based on sex. I'd like this woman and her advocates to make a ruckus. I'd like her to potentially do it without litigation. Go to the employer one-on-one. And by the way, that person you might be greeting on the other side of the table is often a woman. They often head the HR departments at major corporations, and they are squashing down salaries where possible. Again, not based on sex, but maybe based on bargaining power. So, you have recourse. You have allies. Use them outside of government, and I'm sure you will get further than a legal case that keeps you from getting employed elsewhere, leaves you twisting in the wind, possibly a pariah to the next employer. Use moral suasion. Use people like us in your corner to get the equity that you deserve.